Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story Podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Today's guest is Sherene Strausberg. She's founder and creative director of the 87th Street Creative, and she is passionate about helping businesses achieve their branding and marketing goals through powerful, effective design solutions. Understanding the value of communication, collaboration, she ensures clients are informed about the creative process and are thrilled with the final deliverable, which we love because a business is always about the deliverables and the results, never about the process people. Sherene has a great varied background that I actually am looking forward for you sharing a little bit more of your journey. So Sherene, thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Ivy. Glad to be here.
Give us a little bit of the backstory and how you got involved in this.
Sure. So there definitely is a winding road that led me here. So it started with basically I was a musician growing up and I really wanted to be a film composer. And I decided that in high school and I did it. And that was its own journey in terms of going to college and studying music composition and then graduate school and learning film scoring and then moving to Los Angeles and working for almost 10 years as a composer and a sound engineer, which was great, but didn't really have the kind of work-life balance that I knew I would be looking for as I got older. And so it was the kind of thing where I would be up late at night going to film screenings and meeting directors and networking. And then I'd be up early in the morning to be on air to record the hosts at National Public Radio. So I was like, what can I do? And my husband suggested, why don't you study graphic design? He saw the way I was a creative person, but really good at the technology and computers, and learning software really came very easily to me. And so I ended up going back to school. I went to UCLA and took classes at night, and I learned graphic design. And then right around that time, we ended up moving to New York City. So I sort of started my career somewhat new in graphic design. And I worked for several years, about 5 years in graphic design in New York. And while I was doing that, I realized that I loved graphic design, but I really kind of still had my roots in the pulling of the music and the film. And so I learned motion graphics, and I actually took classes at NYU to learn After Effects, and then eventually learned it online at a School of Motion is an online animation school that I now teach at. And I learned how to do motion design. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to leave my job and start.
Okay, I have to ask a question because I want clarity, let alone for the listeners. Explain a little bit more what motion design is as an industry, as a career format.
Right. So what's really interesting about motion design is it's an intersection of many things. It's like graphic design meets film, meets video, meets typography, and as well as, it can even become virtual reality and augmented reality. There's 2D motion design, 3D motion design. There's also stop motion. But I think one of the real things to explain to people is don't think like Pixar and Disney. Like this isn't just for entertainment. It's really for the purpose of explaining or educating or selling. So it's great for advertising. It's great for educational products. It's great for training. It's really good if you have a training video that you want to do for your employees. So the way I say it most succinctly is to say that motion design is very good if you have a product to sell or a story to tell.
And as we know, Marketing 101, stories have great value in marketing.
Absolutely, right. And I think it really works well for sometimes with nonprofits, because maybe they have a mission statement and they've already shown all the videos and the photos and live footage, but now they want to just really tell and explain that mission and explain their mission statement or their all the data from their annual report, but in a visually interesting, enjoyable way. Motion graphics is great for that.
So tell us now a little bit, because so now you have this incredibly interesting background, and listeners, anybody who is new to Her Success Story knows I have a huge passion for people with backgrounds in the arts and performing, as well as athletes, because you show up in business with this ethical approach of practicing every day. And there's that foundation piece. So from there, like, you've built your own company. Did you ever envision yourself doing this after working working in industries for so long, or in big corporate for so long?
I mean, I kind of am not totally surprised that it happened, because in many ways, that's what I was doing as a film composer. I mean, I was a sole proprietor. I was on my own, and I never, even as a composer, I never wanted to be an assistant composer. I never really wanted to be a ghostwriter. And so it was always like, yeah, I kind of wanted to be my own person and do my own thing. And while I felt like I had to get a lot of experience by actually working for companies, especially as a graphic designer when I was starting out, I knew that I definitely still be, what's the word? March to my own beat. And I want to be able to have some autonomy and be able to make my own decisions in terms of clients and projects and goals. And it's also that the whole point of this career change was to be able to have the flexibility, to have a work-life balance, to have children. And I ended up starting this business 6 years ago when I had a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old at home. So
that's ambitious. Let's throw this right out there. It's like, okay, so I have 2 kids under 3, an infant and a 3-year-old. That's a lot of high energy in the house. I just thought I'd take my spare time and start a business. Sometimes it's easier to go to that day job because with the structure.
Absolutely. You are so right. And there was definitely something to be said with, I had a 9 to 5 job, and I could, at 5 p.m., I could shut it off and just walk away and be with my kids. But it's also that I really love my work, and I was always passionate about my work. And it was never something where like I wanted to just walk away. It's, if I'm doing the work I love and the projects I love and with clients I love, I don't necessarily want to walk away. I want it to, be something that I'm doing all the time, but also able to say, well, I can also be with my kids at the same time. And I can go to the event in the middle of the day and read to their schooling classmates. And I have the flexibility that I've always wanted, enough that I was able to have a 3rd child.
Nice. Nice. So, where is your business today? So how, because businesses evolve. We have a concept, so it was whatever, 6-7 years ago, you had a vision, you had a concept. And then as we do business evolves.
Absolutely. So it's definitely been up and down for sure. And I think some of it is somewhat self-inflicted in that, okay, I did decide to have another baby and to take a maternity leave. And I ended up moving. So there were definitely some ups and downs. I also decided to change the focus of my business. So when it started, it was 80% graphic design and 20% motion design. And that has flipped. I'm really doing 80% motion design now and 20% graphic design. And if anything, the graphic design often is, a way to bring clients in to do the motion design work. So if somebody wants me to design a logo for them, I'll do that. But then I'll say, hey, let's animate that logo. Let's put it at the top of your YouTube videos or the top of your newsletter or website. So yeah, there was definitely some ups and downs. And as the work changed, the clients had to change. So because I was doing less graphic design and more motion design, I had to find different types of clients. So that definitely caused, some growing pains. And then of course, I don't know, a world pandemic happened. So
let's talk about that for a minute. So first of all, before we go there, so what type of clients do you find yourself working with today?
So there's a couple different ones. So one time is where it's a direct to client, and that's where it's like a large nonprofit who maybe they're big enough to have a marketing department, maybe even a graphic designer on staff, but they don't have a motion graphics person. So they'll be a great client to bring me in maybe either annually or biannually for like their gala to like create an explainer video about the work they do, or update that video, every 6 months or a year. So that's a great person, as well as anyone else who's in like a marketing department for a company who doesn't have enough of a budget to hire a motion graphics person full time. But then I also sometimes get hired by advertising agencies or studios or video production companies where they're big enough to basically be constantly getting new projects, but it's not with full motion graphics. So maybe they're doing videos, but then a client comes to them and says, hey, we love the videos we do with you, but we want to add an animated element to it. Can you add a 30-second animated spot? And they'll bring me in for that. So that's a great connection too.
So before we go back into this pandemic and things, what have you done to build your business? What has worked for you? Because sometimes that's the biggest conundrum, is where the next clients are coming from. Are you networking? Are you speaking? Are you doing online marketing? Where there's a variety, and speaking in a marketing area, right? What have you found to be most impactful in building a business and developing that component in clients?
Yeah, it's a great question and really interesting, and something that I often struggle with and learn from and grow from all the time. And so far, I have found that networking has been kind of my best way of getting work. And part of it is that I like meeting people. I like talking to people. I like communicating. I love talking about my business. I'm enthusiastic and energetic and excited and all of that. And it shows. And so in many ways, the best way for me to get work is to be able to talk to somebody and meet them and tell them about my business. So I've been in a BNI networking group for the last 2-3 years. And it's a chapter that meets in Manhattan. And but then because of the pandemic, I've been able to do a lot of other networking groups that have been meeting on Zoom. And so normally they'd be meeting while I'm trying to pick up my kids, but instead my husband's home, he can get the kids and I can hop on a Zoom call and do a networking group. So I did Fly Female Founders meeting. I did TNG, the networking group. So there's all sorts of different networking groups that I've been trying and have gotten some good projects and leads out of.
So let's look at this past year plus. I'll always say, visionary leadership in unexpected times really like pulls up what leadership really is. When you start navigating the challenges that you least expect, and how have you navigated business through the pandemic? What have you seen for your area of business?
Right. So it was interesting. I mean, it definitely, like March 12th, I finished a project, and then March 13th, there were crickets and tumbleweeds. And, it definitely was a bit of a shock to just suddenly have projects canceled and no leads coming in. And it was hard, but I sort of took the time to do a couple things. First of all, I continued teaching through that time because it was an online animation school. Enrollment was way up. And so I decided to double the classes that I was teaching. I also decided to take classes myself. And I always believe that there's opportunity for growth and room for improvement. And so it was a good time for me to improve my skills. On top of that, I decided to take on a personal passion project. And I found a book that was amazing called Cool for You. And it's about teaching children about climate change and global warming, but in a very friendly, non-scary way. And I reached out to the author and illustrator and asked permission to animate the book. And I'm actually wrapping that up this summer, and I'm going to be applying for film festivals. And the hope is that I finish this project, I get it out to the world, and I would love to basically do a lot more projects like that, where I'm taking people's stories and their books and turning them into visual, beautiful images and moving animations. So that seemed like something that would be a good use of my time while there wasn't a lot of business. And then I also felt like it was a great time to do a ton of networking. So, before I was doing, one meeting a week, suddenly now I had the time where I could be doing 3 meetings a week. And so I really saw 2020 as like the fallow year of like putting in seeds in the garden. And so many of those plantings really burst in 2021. And I was able to get a lot of new projects really quickly after the new year. And I got one of my biggest projects yet, which was a 6-month project to do animations for Walmart.
Wow. Congratulations.
So that, yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And again, through BNI, through networking, one person I met, at the end of 2020 introduced me to somebody who hired me to do this project in 2021.
So I'm going to ask you, Sherene, what has surprised you in owning a business?
Wow, what has surprised me? It's a constant hustle, and it's like there's no resting on your laurels, in that even if you're busy, even if work is coming in, it doesn't matter, in that you got to keep going. You got to keep hustling. That work can always stop. I mean, I think even the pandemic is a good example of that, like you never know what is going to happen. And what sort of crisis and Armageddon will happen. And that you've got to constantly be at it and meeting people and working it and just never stop, and never, which is fine. I love it. I love what I do. And I'm happy to keep going and keep doing it. I never want to retire.
What tips or advice would you share with other leaders, other business owners? What is some of the one big lesson you've learned in this journey?
I would say never be afraid to invest. And when I say invest, it can be, time, money, people, anything. It's like, it can be invest in keep improving your skills, invest in hiring an assistant, invest in new equipment. Don't be afraid to buy a new computer. I really struggled with upgrading my equipment at various times in my business and my career. Don't be afraid to, take the time or money to go attend a conference. You sort of like never know, and you just don't know who you're going to meet, who you're going to connect with, what you're going to gain from various opportunities. I think one of my favorite quotes is, you have to listen carefully, because sometimes opportunity knocks really softly. And I always really love that, because I think we often expect, someone's just going to like show up at my doorstep and say, hey, I got this great project for you. Here it is in a box, open it up. And here's a list of clients, whatever. And it doesn't work like that. It can sometimes be, you meet somebody, you talk to them for a minute, but then you kind of connect on social media, and then you connect on the phone, and then you're exchanging emails, and then you find out they have a project for you. And you just never know what opportunity is going to lead to something bigger and better.
I think that's brilliant. And I can't agree more. We very often, and I love also how you're clarifying as investing, as it's not always about the money. It's about the time, the money, the energy. And we're always should we do this? Should we not do this? But when you really invest in yourself and you invest in your business, and I think that goes hand in hand. And it doesn't matter if that business is a $100,000 business, $1 million business, $100 million business. It's when you are willing to invest in yourself and your company with your full self, your time, your money, and energy, you will see those results.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. So true.
So, Sherene, thank you so much for joining us here today at Her Success Story.
This has been great. I really appreciate talking to you.
Listeners know we come into your inbox every Monday morning with fresh, great interviews like today, as well as content pieces. Please know, and this is what I say at the end of every episode, so stop and take a breath. Think about what your takeaways are from Sherene and I's conversation today. What did you take away from joining us? You invested the time to show up. What did you take away from it? And wait for it. What are you going to do about it? What is your implementation from hearing this? So if you took one nugget, what can you take forward that furthers your business, your career, and your life? Thank you again, listeners. See you next week on Her Success Story.
Don't need your approval anymore, 'cause I've got mine.